Last time on Sonic the Hedgehog, Dr. Robotnik launches his greatest weapon upon the planet Mobius, with the intent to roboticize the entire world from the comfort of his death egg. However, Sonic and Tails manage to sabotage and destroy his space station, temporarily putting the Doctor's plans on world domination on hold. Sonic and the noble freedom fighters continue to look for various solutions to King Maximilian's mysterious sickness. However, due to unrelated events, only one brave and loyal hero of the Royal Daughter manages to retrieve the only salvation. When last we left our Red Guardian of the Chaos Emerald, Knuckles traveled far and wide, seeking information to the fabled Sword of Acorns, a mystical talisman once owned by the royal family. When retrieved, it is with great hope that the freedom fighters will finally be able to revive King Maximilian, form a strike team against Robotnik, and win the war. Many tales of hilarity have been told, many not covered by our host of the show, but through the very few dramatic and relevant stories, we reach the end of our first major arc of the series. Today, we begin the Endgame saga.
Hello my lovely viewers of the World Wide Web, welcome back to the Summer of Marathons for the Sonic the Hedgehog edition. Today's video is most likely going to be a very long video because we have a lot of comic book history to go through, a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, and then after today's review, we've got one more video game review left to go before we go into our next... wait. Oh, it's already March. So let's dive straight into the story.
So, Robotnik is at his final wit's end. He's had many successful ideas, but poor results. He's come so close to winning, yet somehow his idiocy overshadows his IQ. Like how Jazz Jackrabbit 2's audience is outweighed by the popularity of Undertale. I am never, ever going to review this game. Ever. The main thing I want to cover about this story is despite having such a grandiose, dramatic story, which often plays into one of the many strengths of the comic's earliest issues, this comic received quite the negative reception, and in fact, the original issue 50 of this series is considered non-canon due to the amount of last-minute changes that were made to push for a release date. And because Ken Penders, the supposed Antichrist amongst the Archie Comics Sonic community, was allowed to reprint his initial ideas into a re-released director's cut after issue 62 was released. I'll be going over both versions of the comic to determine which story is the better told one, but for now, let's begin at issue 47. So we begin our adventure with a raid on Robotropolis, as Sonic and the Freedom Fighters plan to launch a surprise attack on Robotnik and supposedly defeat him once and for all. At least that's what the initial plan seems to be, as Sally has a flashback to... 3 hours prior to when her father is revealed to be alive and well. And instead of acting like a caring father who would welcome his daughter back into his life with open arms, he goes on to say, "Hello, sweet daughter of mine, it is I, Tim Curry. Listen, I haven't had the most particularly smashing of days, and that boyfriend of yours, Steve Urkel, I've decided that he's a traitor. I know you may be questioning my sudden change of character, but I am king after all, and so long as I hold authority, you can't question my decisions. Now then,
have a lovely day."
He's a robot. I don't think I'm giving anything away when I say that, but this guy isn't acting like the king, Sally's suspecting his behavior, he's a robot. And even if he wasn't, why does Sally even need to accept a mission from her dad that Sonic's loyalty must be tested? She knows she can trust him, he's been her best friend since they were kids, and now, suddenly, she's going ahead with this elaborate plan that in no way sounds suspicious to her. In fact, I'm just going to stop here and say this once throughout this review. There's a lot of stupid-ass decisions that these characters make to create all of these elaborate plans, yet none of them don't make any sense in context. In fact, the only reason any of these plans work at all is because the main characters are all a bunch of brain-dead idiots. and any reasonable person would be able to look past these schemes. So Sally gives the go-ahead to Sonic to begin infiltrating through the vents, but apparently their plan of infiltration involves Sally climbing down the side of Robotnik's command center, while Sonic enters through the vent that leads straight to Robotnik's command room. Okay, I'm not a tactical espionage advisor or a strategist or whatever, but wouldn't it make sense for the both of them to go through the air vent? In fact, why didn't Robotnik plan it so that when Sonic and Sally show up inside of the command center, he just blows it sky high or gas them with poison? I mean, it's obvious Robotnik's been staging this whole mission from the beginning, so it's not entirely unreasonable to think that he could rethink his strategy to eliminate two birds with one stone. But it's okay, because as soon as Sally gets targeted by the anti-infantry defenses, Roto uses his BFG 9000 to destroy the turrets before Sonic shows up to... Wait, what is he doing?
Wow. Did we just do a Gwen Stacy death? A Gwen Stacy-ish death?
Holy crap! That is one way to kill off a main character. She just fell to her death. I mean, okay, there's no blood or any indication of her bones snapping or her neck breaking, but the way that panel was drawn, the look of hope leaving her eyes, the angles, that was a legitimately good way to portray the character's impending doom. And, of course, at the side of their fallen leader, the Freedom Fighters break formation and go in to secure her, while the Wolf Pack, led by Lupe of the Wolf Tribe, uses their friggin' flamethrowers to melt off and fend away the SWAT bots. Dr. Quack then analyzes Sally's condition and notes that while she is barely alive, she must be taken back to Knothole as quickly as possible. Now, I'm not going to say anything about anything, but keep in mind that originally in this story, Sally was supposed to have died, permanently, for the rest of the series. The only reason I bring this up is because in the next few pages, back at Knothole, it's heavily implied by the frame that she has died. But, after this issue was printed, because of fan outcry, Archie, Sega, and Ken Penders had to rewrite this, and how she survives, we'll find out toward the end. But let this be known, that this wasn't the first time that a main writer for the series has tried to kill off one of the main freedom fighters. And again, because of backlash, the plans were scrapped, and... well, that final time, that character didn't exactly wake up, but they didn't die. They just kinda got rebooted like the rest of the universe. Details. Let's just get back to where we were with Sonic. He manages to get inside the command center with Robotnik and Snively making a getaway.
Until next time, Batman!
And Sonic makes it back outside of Robotropolis with the tornado missing. So he heads back to Knothole, questioning why everyone ditched him in the first place. But before he can be answered, Jeffrey places him under arrest for the supposed murder of Princess Sally. Despite the fact that everyone in that entire friggin' room knows that he is not capable, nor would he be, to kill their leader. Jesus, is everyone in this issue suddenly a descendant of donkeys? Because if they are, I'm willing to bet it's shedding some much needed light on the situation at hand. Now, to be fair, despite the fact that the plan I brought up about blowing Sonic and Sally up in Robotnik's command room would have been simpler to execute, what follows is a complex, yet quite clever setup by the good doctor to frame Sonic for Sally's death. Therefore, sending him to one of the highly secured prisons in the world where he has little to no chance of escaping from, thereby allowing him to attack Knothole directly and win the war. But for whatever reason, and I mean for really counterintuitive reasons to Robotnik's character, he orders his robots to do something that fucks up the entire plan, and he does this on purpose in the next issue, which I'll get into when we get to that. So Sonic is brought before the king, and of course he doesn't believe him because he's not programmed to. He's just blinded by the sadness of the death of his daughter! Or lack of any sadness. And he's sentenced to life imprisonment in the Devil's Gulag, which is basically like the Arkham Asylum or the Star Labs prison, except it's a giant towering island surrounded by boiling ocean water. So Sonic is sent off to the Devil's Gulag in Antoine's X-Jet from the X-Men series, as he recounts the events revolving around King Acorn's crystallization and the fact that he, like anyone else dumb enough to believe to think that he healed up so quickly and out of nowhere. Eventually he's met with some resistance from SWAT bots as they shoot down the X-Jet, and this is the part of the plan that I mentioned earlier being counterintuitive to Robotnik's original scheme. Wasn't the original idea that he wanted Sonic to be sent to a secure location, far away from inflicting any damage to his master plan? If so, why send your infantry after him to shoot down a ship that he's currently occupying? I mean, okay, if this was any other person I could understand. But come on, man! This guy survived being near nuked to extinction when he turned into Mecha Sonic, he escaped captivity from his own home, and he even survived your Death Egg, one of the most powerful weapons on Mobius. What good is a simple plane crash going to do to him? And even after having to think about that, what results from being shot down is an unnecessary monologue from the author detailing to us about Sonic's emotions and his actions. Guys, I already know the turmoil of Sonic's pain. He's lost his best friend, the entire village thinks he's a criminal, he's all alone. I already know that, and he's not in his best mood, and I don't need you to explain what he's doing. The comic is illustrating that on its own because it is a visual representation. If Sonic is the one monologuing, you know, that's fine. But this should just be a show, don't tell situation. Let the comic speak for itself, and then let me absorb everything that our main hero is going through. Okay?
Okay.
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 So Sonic makes a quick getaway into Bugs Bunny's home, as we cut to Antoine and Bunny taking part in an espionage mission on Draco, one of the members of the Wolf Pack, as they both discover that he is a member of Robotnik's spies, and has managed to partially rope his girlfriend, Hershey the Black Cat, into his evil schemes. But before they can inform the others, they get caught and taken to Down Under's prison.
Hey, what a coincidence that the story we're looking at today also happens to be hosted by a man who comes from the land down under.
Back to our hero Sonic, as he is awakened by the sound of rabid Tasmanian devils chasing him down, with Pepe Le Pew hot on his trail. 3 characters from a classic line of Looney Tunes names that I've mentioned now, and all in one issue, how strange. So Jeffrey manages to track down the blue blur using a tracker he placed on his shackles, as they eventually get into fighting each other with the same old "she loved me, no, she loved me" love triangle conflict bullshit that you see in these comics. Back at Knothole, the king reveals to his citizens that not only does he make for a terrible impersonator of a regal leader, but he, unsurprisingly, hands over his emergency powers
To the Supreme Chancellor.
So, yeah, in case it wasn't obvious by that amazing display of acting, Robotnik reveals himself to be the one pulling the strings of these delusional puppets, and aptly has the citizens of Knothole sent off to Robotropolis to be roboticized. The issue ends with Sonic knocking Jeffrey out for like 5 seconds before he's up and on his feet again, and he makes a dive for the cliff, transitioning onto the next issue. Okay, we're halfway through this story, and I have to admit, after really analyzing this story, like really studying the aspects and the structure of this story, I can kind of see why this story is so negatively received. At least for me, the main characters are incredibly stupid. The initial plan is completely revamped for no reason, and for a story that had a huge setup involving a big showdown between the Blue Dude and the Lord of Lard, a majority of these issues focuses more of its time getting Sonic involved in a wild goose chase. Speaking of said chase, the story picks up with Sonic falling to his doom and he uses the dirt hidden in his shoes from all the running around to create a land strip so he can sprint across to safely and avoid drowning. I don't think I need to clarify why this sort of shit irritates me, since I already did an analysis of this in my previous video, but for the sake of summarizing for those who haven't seen that review, just because you can make shit up on the spot without context doesn't make it a plausible excuse if it's never used again. So back in Knothole and Robotropolis, Robotnik seizes control of Knothole, and like I said earlier, he sends them off to be roboticized, as Dr. Quack is ordered by Snively to Actually, I don't know what it is that he wants Dr. Quack to do to the king. He just vaguely commands him to do some medical shit, or else he'll kill his family, and then we awkwardly cut back to where Sonic is. And you might notice something about these issues as you read them. You notice how these two look surprisingly shorter and kind of cuter looking? Well, that's because throughout the entire early years of Sonic the Hedgehog, there never was a consistent art style that the writers and the artists wanted to hang on to, and it's something I've touched base on many times before. This particular art style is noteworthy because it's clearly been drawn by an artist who knows to do very wacky, cartoony drawings like Looney Tunes, in a story that has nothing to do with comedy and actually relies more on drama and mature tones. This style doesn't really work. On the other hand, surprisingly, the artist in the final issue of this story, alongside many other artists, all contribute to certain pages to portray the story. And in some of the pages, they work, such as this style being used for an action-packed page, because the line work and the angles of these drawings complement the look of what a video game character would look like in the middle of a battle. In otherwise situations, like when Sonic summons Dulcie the Dragon, who barely does anything in the series, to make a quick getaway, even though this should be portrayed as a desperate fugitive running away from the relentless commander of the army, it instead plays it off as the classic wacky cartoon character outwitting the clumsy cop who shouts, "Oh, I'll get you next time! You'll see! You'll see!" So cutting back to Knothole Village, where Kiba's rejected Snowwolf bitch slaps the shit out of his girlfriend, prompting revealing to her that the Sonic costume that he gave her for her CanCon 2017 apparently creates the illusion to see Snively no matter who she looks at. Realizing that she was the one that killed Sally, Draco reveals his betrayal and... Okay, I can't believe I have to start bitching again, but I have to address several problems with this plan if this was ever done with any reasonable person. Number 1. Hershey is too tall of a character to impersonate Sonic. She would need to be stouter, fatter, and have the limb structure of a bamboo stick in order for the disguise to work. 2. If the plan was for Draco to convince Hershey that Snively would be climbing down a rope, how come she never questioned him on the fact that Snively would even be on that rope in the first place? And how would he know about this? Where did he get his information from? Does she not ask him questions? 3. Since Draco wanted her to dress up as Sonic in the first place, why did it never occur to her that this was all a trap? If she knew about this from him, wouldn't it be simpler to tell the Freedom Fighters that they have the opportunity to kill Snively, even if it was a trick? They would be able to figure out Draco is a traitor that way and arrest his ass on the spot. Details. They're just like Michael Bay movies. You could make them better, but that takes actual effort to make that happen. So we cut to the land down under as we see Antoine and Bunny with their fancy new explosive collars, as they also happen to share a cell with two of the Down Under freedom fighters, Walt Wallaby and Barbie Koala. So, where's Crash Bandicoot? No Crash Bandicoot? Okay. Well, how about Blinky Bill? No Blinky Bill? Okay. Well then how about Steve...
Get on with it!
Okay. So the leader of the Down Under prison site is revealed to our two heroes and...
What the fuck is this?
What the fuck am I looking at? Is this a mechanical robot crocodile in a tank with a cannon for a penis? Is this a new fetish design that Dr. Robotnik has created for his commanders? That at least one of them should have a phallic weapon in their pants? Is this a new form of sword fighting that I've never heard of before? Oh well, if that's the case, I'm surprised that this guy wasn't brought up in Aaron's D-Club story from the Game Grumps. So after the phallic reptile explains how he constructed his body back together using simple scrap parts, and why he has a cannon for a penis, we cut back to Sonic and Dulcie making an emergency landing when Knuckles jumps out and decides to arbitrarily attack the two without any rhyme or reason. It's not like he knows that Sally is dead or that he's being accused of killing Sally. No. This is just a traditional Echidna custom, where you greet your allies by beating the shit out of them. The story ends with St. John somehow catching up to Sonic using a parachute, and then we move on to our final issue. Alrighty. Now, to quickly go over the director's cut version of this, issue 50 originally had some pages that had to deal with Robotnik's relation to this Mobius's version of humans called the Overlanders. Some panels that had Hershey and Draco were cut, the pages of Bunny and Antoine's escape are also cut, and the pages depicting the eradication of Knothole are now replaced with a hastily put together transition of Sonic battling against Robotnik. The reason that these changes were made was because of time constraints. Henceforth, why people didn't like this issue. Because in the end, it was just underwhelming and a bit jumbled in areas. The version that we're looking at fills in the rest of the details. It explains a lot more, it has some form of conclusion between Robotnik's connection to the Overlanders, as well as his rivalry against Sonic. It makes sense for me to review this version, it's more complete, and I'm willing to go easier on this issue by looking at something that is at least finished, instead of an issue that clearly has a ton of details missing. So, here we go. We're starting off with a flashback of the young, mid-30s-ish Doctor running away from a squad of Overlanders who seem to be chasing down for high treason or some shit, until he's picked up by Sonic's father Jules and his uncle Chuck. And as thanks for his rescue, Julian is offered to be War Commander and help the Kingdom of Acorn fight off against the Overlanders. Now, I know I haven't specifically covered any previous history between the Mobians and the Overlanders since the previous issues had nothing to do with them, but let's just say that the Overlanders are mutagenic barbarian humans who, like us, live in a technological industrial environment, and since the Mobians are more akin to preserving the environment, they're stuck to a medieval-like age. So with Julian Kenterbor's help, the Mobians manage to drive off the anime protagonist rejects and claim victory in their homeland. Back in the present day, Robotnik awakens from his flashback dream just in time to test out his new weapon, the Ultimate Annihilator, on an Overlander. With a resounding success, it looks like Robotnik's created his greatest weapon yet, and with it, he plans to use it on Knothole to win the war once and for all. It's not like he could have burned it to the ground when he turned up to capture everybody, but again, details, who needs them? Back on Angel Island, Sonic, Knuckles and Jeffrey continue their sausage party amongst each other until Dulcie jumps in and convinces everyone, not through common sense or forms of evidence, but through convenient powers of being a dragon, that she can sense the purity and honesty in Sonic, and since dragons can't lie, well, everyone is suddenly buddy-buddy again. It's like it never happened. 3 issues to sit through all of this, and all it took to clear his name was a dragon deciding now is the right time to tell everyone, hey, dumbasses, Sonic ain't the one who did it! In any case, Bunny and Antoine make a jailbreak from Down Under's prison along with the remaining Down Under freedom fighters, as they manage to snag a ride onto a cargo ship carrying the essential materials needed for the Ultimate Annihilator. They eventually manage to sneak their way into Robotropolis, thanks to the freighter, and along the way, they snag some explosives to place onto the Ultimate Annihilator before it can fire at Knothole. Meanwhile, the remaining freedom fighters are escorted back to Robotropolis, but along the way, they get ambushed by Knuckles, Sonic, and Jeffrey, aptly defeating the SWATbot team and freeing the remaining residents of Knothole. Sonic gives chase toward Draco, who shouldn't be able to run this fast against the fastest thing alive, but he's then lured in by his girlfriend and, like an idiot, he falls for a seductive trap, which leads to her emotionally and physically kicking the shit out of him. Like, goddamn, if she was this good at freedom fighting to begin with, I'm surprised she didn't just go all out when he revealed his betrayal in the first place. He eventually gets conked out and Hershey reveals to Sonic that she accidentally led Sally to her death, with Sonic supposedly forgiving her for a mistake, and runs off to finish things with Robotnik for the last time. He makes his way into the city, with surprisingly little resistance outside. You'd think for a dictator who's this close to world domination would take some liberties into making sure his security was still up, but whatever. As Sonic makes it past the first corridor, coming across Snively in his Ratchet and Clank getup, Sonic manages to defeat him easy peasy in a somewhat cool looking action sequence. Again, the art style changes a couple of times throughout the issue, and I will say the few times that they do the action scenes, some of them are pretty cool to look at, but it pales in comparison to this upcoming fight. Sonic bumps into Antoine and Bunny, who in turn tells Sonic that they plan to destroy Robotnik's weapon with a set detonator, before Sonic runs off to settle one last personal issue with his old foe. However, it is too late. Robotnik manages to convert his laser fire into an orbital space station, which manages to charge up enough energy to wipe out Knothole Village. Devastated at the loss of his home, friends, and his life, Sonic decides to stop playing around and go out full force. With Antoine and Bunny successfully destroying the weapon, and with a savagely mad-driven Doctor bent on the edge of victory, The two foes collide in one of the most beautifully eye-catching fights in the series. This is no Mecha Madness. This is Endgame. The fight where the line work has the most care, the most detail, and impressive angles. The way this fight is drawn with the speed lines, the blurring, the multiple frames of punches and maneuvers, it's honestly one of my favorite parts of this issue. I don't want to say it makes up for the rest of how sloppy this story has turned out, but damn it, when a fight scene is done well, it's done really well here. The way these characters move, attack, the way it's illustrated, and the fact that it doesn't rely on some silly monologue about how two rivals consumed by bloodlust trade blows one after the other with great speed and power. The comic just shows us the fight, and allows us to soak in all of the hard work that the artist put into to make this one of the most climactic battles in 90s comic book history. It even has its own iconic panel shot, with Dr. Robotnik and Sonic being consumed with laser fire. I mean, that's one of the greatest frames I've ever seen. And the frame following all of that, it's all done in pencil. The toning on this page is friggin' marvelous. It is such a great compliment to the page preceding it. Though I will say Sonic's mouth here needs to be reworked a little. The perspective looks a little weird here. So the two are engulfed in a white light, silence covers the room, nothing moves. Until... Sonic wakes up in Knothole medical ward, and thanks to Dr. Quack, we get a huge information dump regarding what actually happened to Robotnik and Knothole respectively. So for whatever reason, and I don't exactly know how this works, but since the Ultimate Annihilator fired on Knothole, the zone around Knothole now exists as its own separate zone that exists 3 hours into the future from the original Mobius. The reason for why the Ultimate Annihilator did what it did, instead of destroying it, is because Snively had plans to disobey and overthrow his uncle. So he intentionally tampered with the machine, knowing that Sonic and the Freedom Fighters would find a way to fire it back on Robotnik, and set it so that the only organic being that would be vaporized from existence would be Robotnik himself. Hence why he is no longer alive, and why Sonic still exists. Now, Dr. Quack is only aware of this because ever since he created that Dreamwatcher machine that showed us flashbacks in issue 43, it apparently convinced Robotnik that this machine's technology was the key to wiping out Knothole, and Dr. Quack only helped out because his family ended up being kidnapped. And the final thing that we're told before this friggin' issue ends is that Sally, yeah, remember her, she was actually the driving point behind this whole story, did in fact survive the fall, but because she was only mostly dead, it was easy to convince the rest of the Freedom Fighters and Robotnik that she did die, and she is in fact in a stasis tube, awaiting to be awakened again.
Well, it just so happens that your friend here is only mostly dead. There's a big difference between mostly dead and all dead.
Sonic rushes out to meet her in her snow-white grave, and through the power of love, sort of, she manages to wake up. The artists give their Son Alley fans their shipping via this panel, and everything ends happily ever hunky-dory after. Oh man.
So... that was something, I guess.
I'm not gonna beat around the bush with this. I used to like this story arc because of how much tension was being built up for the fight between Sonic and Robotnik. The two characters are such classic icons and they have such a strong bond of rivalry that leads them to become stronger and better. Not that their rivalry is anywhere near competition worthy, they're arch nemesis to each other, but in the games, you always know that they're at their best when they fight. This issue certainly demonstrated that in the final pages, but at the same time, was the journey even worth reaching the destination? I mean, looking back on this story now, a lot of dumbass shit happens. Plans are hastily thrown away for more, less elaborate plans, and the main characters are too idiotic to realize that Robotnik is pulling the strings when it's obvious that he's doing it right in front of them. I will give credit where credit is due though. The art styles that actually work within the comic do bring out the most intense action. The action scenes are done very well. The writing, while I find unbearable with the scenes that I don't think are necessary, are written well, so it's not too distracting. Robotnik's plan to destroy Knothole and frame one of its most powerful warriors is actually very smart, and could have worked had Sonic actually gone to Devil's Gulag. Even the little flashbacks with Robotnik and the Overlanders did make me kind of curious about how much more history that the comic has in store. It's at this point that I've always considered that Sonic was beginning to leave his days of style over substance, where the comic originally focused more on the humour and the sitcom stories, but had then tried to create a consistent story-driven narrative with focused character motivations and good writing. And like the text box says on the bottom of the page, that's another story for another day.
And that pretty much wraps up the first major arc of the Sonic the Hedgehog series. I hope you all enjoyed it and...
Review the early Sonic comics already!
Okay, I guess I owe you guys that much since we've gotten to the Endgame stuff, and, well, I haven't even talked about these yet, so, yeah, we might as well go ahead and review them. So from March the 15th, we're going to start off from the very first issue of Sonic the Hedgehog, and we're going to go from issues 1 to about 40, maybe the remaining issues from 40 to 50 that I didn't cover, and I'll just make them brief. I don't want to make this too long of a video because I want to get straight on to the next set of series of story arcs that I've got to cover. I've also got to cover Knuckles the Echidna, the spin-off comic. There are a couple of people who requested that, and yeah, you guys pretty much just dictate what I have to review next. So, with all those plans that I've just improvised and came up with, does that sound good to you?
Yeah. Sounds good!
Okay, good. Well, with all of that said, the only thing that's left on this little bucket list is this game. There's not a lot to talk about, and I'm going to do a brief review on this, because honestly, I don't have a lot to say about it. It's a Sonic Boom game, so I guess everyone else has just said what they wanted to say about the previous Sonic Boom games, but this one is a little bit different. It's not like the others where they were so bad they were good. This one is a little interesting. But when we get to that, I'll talk about it. So with all of that said, take care of yourselves, have a good evening, and as always, stay awesome, lovely viewers. I'll see you all next time.